Cgq Office, Private Living, 5521, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I'm doing my voodoo at the board, just can observe and play video game, and voodoo is kind of to help me and win the championship. I wanna make a touchdown. First thing of all, independent effort, academic research, triple Nobel Prize. Cidadão Cretinismus Brasilis. But you can observe that this case is all about guarantees and basic rights. We have failures on east, west, and center. And as you can observe, the connection between those segments as big bubbles are inside a Venn diagram. And the interconnection of all areas is kind of a target, because we'll be in touch with a lot of things maybe. And if this go as a criminal scam, knows everything about the crime, organized it, as you can observe, by failures in 3 different areas, and the association by failures connected, which implies a contract, something like this, or a segment at the digital space. And sometimes you consider things at the digital space as cloning an entire segment. You can clone maybe an area that sometimes will kind of put you in a situation a bit worse. For instance, when you take a look at the board, we have a scam named Deep Web. Deep Web is kind of second or levels, many levels inside the communication service. And in general, you do this by the not authorized use of machines, instruments, and implies the system, and the continuity as association forms the need as a segment, which will be a consequence of internal failures at the providers to obtain the expertise and raise segments that can replace this. Our constitution says that in all cases this is illegal, because when you take a look at Article 5, Item 12 of our Constitution, it's written, then you can violate the communication and all things, data. You only can do the interception as phone call during a criminal procedure that has a time rational, can be something during 10 years against one specific citizen research, and by the judge with signatures. And when you do the misuse of your prerogatives, cloning sometimes an entire segment, maybe you will be tracked at that thing on the board as abusive procedure law 13,890, I think articles 20 up on. And these goes as failures at public departments and happens in a subsidiary area. By similarity, the same pattern observed when you do the wrongdoing as all systems, considering the budget, the health system, the security, the financial system, transferring this information to the central bank and Department of Treasury Brazil, all inside a period very specific international players necessarily on it, which was 2012 up to 2022 FIFA Olympics provide. And these patents allowed us to have an influence by the American judicial system, which is that maybe the similarity points to the same criminal groups. traced by time, crossed by space, combined as time-space, chairs occupied inside specific public departments, going in specific buildings, and proving the Article 23, Item 1 as failure has to obtain institutional empowerment, and confirming one more time that you did this by the integrated failure on Article 74. You raised a clandestine system, but we can use the optimization as Deep Blue and DB2, and it's an optimization only by the point of view. It didn't change nothing on it. But if you have a different point of view, this is an optimization. We consider not have the use of the Deep Blue to play chess, but to win games. And we're considering the DB2 as database relational to have the review by the relation considering causality as associative property or attribute, and this permit maybe have the research of a segment inside an integrated system with failure, which is segmented by failure clustered by department and decorated by buildings with specific chairs on space. Simple, isn't it? Some block. Risk report 2022, tracefebruary.blogspot.com. We have macro segments, and the relational association between two both as a match, which is in chess, can allow a contest, allowed us to have the perception as a contest or an association, because the patterns of players matched during this match will allow to have this. And sometimes the public department, the public sector, and the corporative sector are kind of doing a coalition. And this will be unveiled by the Watson, which is a platform, a cognitive platform available. And the Deep Blue only will have the movement, as a storage that can permit maybe the Watson have a projection as prediction. And it's a way, I would say, a pathway to have more accuracy when you use the inference inside the judicial system in America. The relational database allowed us to have the buildings at the public sector or segment that are kind of having the same model as coalition, which points to the same pattern as players playing the game, the same game, which is a failure at the segment on a corporative area. And the database as relational will allow us to have this relation as something based on domain and image by the empowerment as institutional empowerment or economic empowerment, considering the domain of use as investment center. A decision to transfer money implies someone that will receive this money, which can be the domain as itself or the image of a hidden domain. And the deeper level presented as an image is the same idea as deep web. And we could have this when you clone, for instance. The provider gave me a possibility as DNS IPv4, DNS IPv6. DNS IPv6 is something new, limited ways to have this access. If you do not shut down, you probably will have the replacement of your machines the cloning of your machines that will replace your connection or login at this DNS. Then you will poison, I would say, the DNS, and you will clone the DNS as itself or the segment. And when you do this to get my information or collect the industrial secrets that you have, which is a premise to achieve this big success, considering the charge against you, criminal offenders, you will probably be in a situation a bit more uncomfortable, because the digital space in general goes like this. When I have the request of something, I open a circuit, and this circuit will be crossed with a receiver as a regular process as communication. And in general, I will have, for instance, my request to transfer an email that will be like this. And this is inside the interval as communication. And you decide to clone this interval. But when you clone this interval, you are cloning or doing the interception as an interference of my request to transfer the email and the authentication as signatures inside my mail account, which has a provider and a lot of things, to transfer this by someone that now will be in the same way inside your segment as deep web. And let's suppose that I am the Cgq as mail account, and I will consider have maybe a work group by the provider American Online, by the provider Outlook, by the provider Yahoo. And when you did this, you for sure put every single request to transfer the mail at this your segment, and you put in the same way the receiver on your segment as deep web. Let's suppose that I have the IBM in a moment that you strive for instance a chair as director and researcher, and the NATO, and the FBI, and the US defense system, and the European Investment Bank, and the OECD, and the Zurich as insurance company, and the Bank of Japan, and the others. You put everybody inside your interval, and you maybe had a situation inside this process of communication, which can be about security, which can be about an industrial project, even as a new point of view, or the development of something new, which is a creation as about to put you inside. These kind of things as a mental model is the same thing as committing a financial crime using a budget, because you have a secondary level of information inside the budget, and then you will need the migration of modified data or simulation by donation during the campaign before or during the electoral period, and these kind of things. You can maybe present a dossier or a closed case by the peers on it that maybe got attracted or tracked by this deep web scam, and they have reasons maybe to feel themselves victimized in the same way, and have the development as urbanism on West, respecting our tradition, our culture, and the way we do things in the same way on Asia, Japan, Bank of Japan will respect that ancient and millennial culture. See, Lombroso, Cesare Lombroso was an Italian jurist, I think, a researcher, a scientist, that had a theory 2 centuries before that the criminal has kind of specific design of his biological structure, especially the brain, the head, the bones, the bone heads. And of course, that 2 centuries after, we will observe that the criminals, and this by the law, and not the 80s, New York, USA, got chairs, domain, and sometimes put image on it. And they kind of, as image, will be a cloned design of this hidden ledger as domain, which implies the behaviors, mass criminal behaviors, by the way of the things, the way as behavior, and a lot of similarities, that the group can maybe help ourselves. And this entire structure will be inside a design as database sigma, with values optimized for conviction. You only need for sure the positive one, internal value negative one. From this point you can track all things. But you have inside your 00 internal value negative one as infiltrated agents. You can confirm more things. And we will observe that human nature is very competitive, especially when they are doing pre-values. Because the time is ticking and the utilitary level of information has a decrease. So, be in a hurry and be useful. Have a nice week.